Good morning, everyone. My name is Hunter Brown. I'm the Executive Director of Operational Quality at LDOE. Welcome to today's School System Planning Office Hours. As we noted in the chat, we did provide the link to today's deck if you would like to access it. Also, please send any questions that you have during today's call using the chat feature, and be sure to please please send an email address when you send a question. Today, we're going to quickly review some of the information that was shared on the school system planning launch, which happened last Friday. We will also offer a couple of updates as well as an opportunity for folks to ask questions, which we will attempt to respond to live and on the air. As an important note, all of the school system planning launch materials, which LDOE released last Friday, can be accessed on the School Improvement Library using the link on the slide or by searching School Improvement Library on our Louisiana Believes website. You can also click the picture of the school system planning launch below to go directly to a recording of that presentation if you were not able to attend before. To review, LDOE is releasing guidance in two phases this year to accommodate the Achieve Incentive Planning application as well as Super App coming in November. So the primary set of information that we released last Friday revolved around the Achieve Incentive Planning application, and we will update and provide additional information more geared towards Super App and the Achieve Incentive Planning Round 2 in November. At a high level, things that have changed from last year's school system planning to this year's school system planning include the following. First, we are making a shift from planning primarily for schools with an intervention label. Those are CIR and UIR academic and UIR discipline schools. To a more holistic approach of planning for all schools. The ESSER funds, which came from the 3 stimulus packages passed by Congress, have opened up a lot more opportunities for all schools to benefit, as opposed to prior years when we primarily had funding sources that could serve labeled schools. Secondly, we are moving from only using Super App to using several applications, and we'll talk about the purpose of each and look at the purpose of each and understand a little bit more about those later in the presentation. Third, we went from limited inclusion of early childhood items to a more cohesive approach to plan for birth through graduation. We have a lot more opportunities for early childhood items this year. Fourth, we have moved from primarily selecting partners only on LDOE's various vendor guides to offering the opportunity for school systems to identify alternate evidence-based partnerships that they may wish to pursue in the future. And last, we previously would release a preliminary set of ESSA funds in December, which school systems would budget before turning in their Super App. We got feedback from various stakeholders across the state that was not the most ideal situation, and so for that reason, we have delayed the loading of those preliminary funds, and instead we'll release ESSA funds at the same time that competitive funds are loaded into Super App, which is usually around May 1st. The 3 main grant applications that we'll talk about today are Achieve, Believe, and Super App. A few key dates to pay attention to. Though we only released the Achieve Incentive Planning application last Friday, the first set of questions, there are 17 questions to respond to. Those responses are due by October 7th. So please pay attention to that date and please start planning appropriately. You can see the other key due dates moving forward in time of when we will release Believe when we release Achieve Incentive Round 2, when those items are due, and of course, Super App as well. When you look in the school system planning guide, LDOE recommends several action items to help school systems plan for submitting these applications on time. And so we'll run through some of those now. All of these recommended action steps, we recommend that you complete them by September 30th because that will give you time to then turn around and submit the Achieve Incentive Planning questions by October 7th in a timely manner. So the first recommended action item is setting up a team who's going to be responsible for planning and completing these various applications. We recommend that you assign a planning lead, both for planning purposes across the school system, as well as planning for specifically your labeled schools, your CIR, UIRA, and UIRD schools. Next, we recommend that you perform a needs analysis to understand any problems that your school system wishes to address in the future, as well as gut check your own goals and priorities relative to any other action plans that your school system may have in place or long-term strategic plans that you may have in place. We recommend that you collect feedback on any plans for the upcoming school year, and then of course building the plan, which part of that will be the Academic Recovery and Acceleration Plan, which LDOE released guidance on several weeks ago, and this plan I believe is due on September 30th as well. So building that plan, as well as the plan to address Achieve Incentive items, as well as Super App items. Finally, LDOE released an optional budgeting tool, which we have released a workbook in the past. However, this year we've updated that workbook to also include a budgeting component, and that link is here. So if school systems wish, you can use that tool to plan out several years worth of a budget and collaborate using that tool so that everyone can sort of understand what is being planned. All right, the Achieve Incentive Planning application. So as I mentioned earlier, this application will be released in 2 phases. Phase 1, or round 1, was released last Friday, and that's the first set of 17 questions that school systems have the ability to identify optional funding opportunities through. There are no required questions in either round of Achieve Incentive application. They are all optional, but there is quite a bit of funding that is available to school systems if you think that some of those various items are the right fit for your students. As I mentioned, the Achieve Incentive application is now live, and you have until October 7th to complete. And the round 2 questions will be added into the same application, the same Achieve Incentive Planning application, once you have submitted on October 7th, so that you can then, we will load those questions, and on the same date that we release Super App, which is early November, we will release the round 2 questions in the same application for you to respond to there as well. Believe is our early childhood and school system and lead agency budget that school systems and lead agencies will work in to identify all of your early childhood funding opportunities. This funding can be used to support families and ensure that child care centers are stabilized and provide children with high quality learning experiences. If you have questions specific to this application, you can send them either to our LDOE.grants help desk address with Believe in the subject line, or you can go directly to our early childhood team at the address shown below. Super App is the application most of you are familiar with from years past, and that application submits funding requests primarily for CIR and UIR schools. We will be releasing data guidance in November to finalize any items related to CR, UIRA, and UID schools so that school systems can complete their planning. One new item this year that I mentioned earlier is the alternate evidence-based option form. So this is the form that school systems will see at various places in both the Achieve incentive application as well as Super App, where it will give school systems the opportunity to identify evidence-based approaches that may differ from the current identified vendors that we have in our various vendor guides, and submitting evidence that meets the requirements may open up funding opportunities for those alternate options. The key resources that school systems have to use for school system planning include, of course, the planning guide, which we released last Friday. Appendix A, which is inside of that planning guide, is the place where you can go to understand every question that you will see in both the Achieve incentive applications as well as Super App. It provides guidance for responding to those questions and creating funding requests where applicable, as well as providing links to resources, again, for each question. The Academic Recovery and Acceleration Plan, this was released a couple of weeks ago, and so you probably have seen that guidance by now, but that is, of course, another planning tool. And then, as I mentioned before, the Strategic Planning and Budgeting Workbook is another optional resource where school systems can both plan a long-term budget as well as see a mock-up of every question that we're planning for Achieve incentives as well as Super App. LDWE offers a variety of supports to school systems as you complete your planning. The School Improvement Library has all of the resources that we have mentioned before and will be continually updated to include decks as well as recordings of these office hours for your use. Please be on the lookout in LDWE's weekly newsletter for upcoming office hour events, as well as any other important information related to Achieve Incentive or Super App. We also have the school system leader calls, federal support and grantee relations calls, as well as I mentioned, office hours. For any questions that you have in the interim, please feel free to email ldoe.grantshelpdesk@la.gov and be sure to include the name of the application in the subject line for which you have a question about. Right. At this time, we will go and review questions that have been submitted using the chat feature. If you have additional questions, please continue to submit those. We will pull together some responses and come back in a few moments to begin responding to questions. All right. Our first question is, where is the Achieve Incentive application located? So most school systems by now have created an Achieve budget in Super App, which means that you will have already completed the contact and assurance section within Super App for the Achieve application. Having done that should cause the Achieve Incentive application to become available. And the place where you would look for it is the 2021 application area. It should be down at the bottom under available. If you do not see that, please, and you have already completed an Achieve budget, please email Grants Help Desk and ask them to help assist. If you are a school system who has not yet completed an Achieve budget, you will have to create that Achieve budget first and complete the contacts, complete the assurances in that application. Once you have done that, then Achieve Incentive should show up in the available area. Our second question is, do the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 amounts in the Academic Recovery and Acceleration Plan need to equal the amounts in the ESSER budgets? And the response is, the Academic Recovery and Acceleration Plan is for activities school systems will implement from the start of the 21-22 school year through June 30th of 2022. Therefore, the ESSER 2 and 3 formula funds that will be used for these activities should be reflected in the plan, which may not sum up the total of your ESSER 2 and 3 allocation in total. All right, we are still working on one other response. If you have other questions, please feel free to continue sending them, and we will be back in just a moment. So actually, the only other question that we received at this point was actually the same as the previous question I just answered about the ESSER 2 and 3 amounts in the Academic Recovery and Acceleration Plan. We will hang on the line for 2 more minutes. If any other questions come in during that time, we'll respond to them here. Otherwise, we'll conclude the call at that time. Please send any other questions using the chat feature, and be sure to include an email address if you do send a question. All right, at this time, we have responded to all questions, and if any other questions roll in as we hop off the call, we will make sure to connect with those individuals after the call. Thank you all for joining. That does conclude today's office hours, and we hope that everyone has a great weekend. Thank you.